What's up, Dodger fans? Appreciate all you tuning in to the Incline Dodgers podcast, home of your World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. We got an exciting show today. There has been a lot of buzz and momentum growing in the Roki Sasaki saga. We appear to be coming near the 10-yard red zone finish of this, as there are numerous reports out there that Roki Sasaki has narrowed it down to his final three teams. You've got the Toronto Blue Jays, which feel like the biggest dark horse in this entire dance, but they were in that Shohei Ohtani mix, and they always seem to be right there with the Dodgers, who are the other team heavily in on the Roki Sasaki free agency journey. And then you've got this San Diego Padres, probably the biggest thorn right now and the closest team that could challenge the Dodgers in signing Roki Sasaki. So as we begin to talk about the final days of this chapter, Roki Sasaki is eligible to sign with the team starting tomorrow on January 15th. And the expectation is he has a tight deadline. I think the latest he can push this out to is January 23rd. I don't expect it to go that long. I wouldn't be shocked if we find out even as early as tonight where Roki Sasaki decides to sign with, in an agreement that is. But Jake Reiner is here with me. We're going to talk Roki Sasaki. We'll answer any of your guys' questions as well. And we're going to leak some stuff that we've heard in terms of the Roki Sasaki news. But let me pass it over to Jake Reiner, who's happy that the Los Angeles Rams took down the Minnesota Vikings. And he's just a happy guy in general because the Dodgers are World Series champs. What's going on, Jake? What's new? What do you want to talk about?
Well, just first of all, the Rams were the only LA professional sports team that understood the assignment. I mean, we just got ravaged by these wildfires, and shout out to anybody going through anything right now. I know there's so many uncertainties out there with people losing their homes, other folks not being able to go back to their homes because of road closures and because the fire is still raging. Not as bad as it was a few days ago, but the Rams were the only team to really understand what the assignment was, which was to win a game for Los Angeles. And it really felt like all of Los Angeles was behind the Rams. The Chargers, I don't even really view them as a Los Angeles team. They sort of remind me of football's version of the Clippers. I just feel like those teams need to prove why they should be in Los Angeles at this point. I am tired of watching the Clippers. I am tired of watching the Chargers. I think they need to get out of here, find a new city. We have teams that are not only champions, world champions, but have established themselves in Los Angeles as the teams here. I'm talking about the Dodgers, the Lakers, the Kings, the Rams. Those teams are the teams that should be in Los Angeles. They've earned the right to be here. The Chargers and Clippers need to get out of LA. I'm sick and tired of them. But other than that, good job on the Rams. Roki Sasaki, you mentioned that he's probably going to make a decision very soon. I can't imagine that he's going to take, the amount of time that you just listed, which you said was the 23rd. I feel like this decision is going to come fairly quickly. We started to learn that a number of the teams are no longer in the running, like the Mets and the Yankees are no longer in the running. And it seems as though the Toronto Blue Jays are kind of the cucks of MLB right now. They are always in the conversation. They never get chosen. So we'll see. They say that the Blue Jays are in it, but I don't know. I mean, they never truly, have the last word. It's going to be between the Dodgers and the Padres. And it's so fitting, right? Because I feel like the Padres are the only team in the NL West right now. Arizona did make some good moves, but I feel like right now, the Padres are the only one to really challenge the Dodgers for the NL West. So it's very fitting that they're challenging them for one of the biggest prizes of the offseason in Roki Sasaki. I mean, it's a pretty simple decision in my mind for this pitcher. He either wants to go to a winning culture, a franchise that has an opportunity to win a World Series title every single year, has the pedigree, has the superstars in the Los Angeles Dodgers, and kind of be one of the cogs in this immaculate machine that they've built. Or he wants to go to the Padres now. The Padres do have a lot of stars on their team, but less established, not even close to winning a World Series title. So they're kind of that team where you go to them and you want to establish your legacy there. And maybe that's what Roki Sasaki wants to do. Maybe he wants to be the guy in San Diego and rival the Dodgers and go after Yamamoto and Ohtani and team up with Yu Darvish and that sort of thing. So I could see it going either way. I see why both places make sense. But obviously, if you want a chance to win a World Series title right out the gate, you saw what happened with Ohtani and Yamamoto joining the Dodgers. They instantly win rings. That could also happen with Sasaki.
Yeah, I mean, the Padres' best selling point certainly is kind of what you were just saying. If Roki Sasaki wants to build a legacy and cement himself as the best pitcher in a franchise's history, he's got a very good chance to do that in San Diego, because I couldn't even tell you who their best pitcher would be off the top of my head. Maybe Jake Peavy, if that's who we want to go with. As opposed to the Dodgers, you got Kershaw, Koufax, Ohtani soon, Yamamoto, Fernando. And if this is an ego thing and a legacy thing, and Sasaki wants to be the star, the forefront of a rotation and not be mixed in the shuffle like he would be with Los Angeles, then those are certainly the best selling points for the Padres. But the worst selling points right now for the San Diego Padres, it starts with the ownership being a complete wreck right now.
Yep.
The team has no money to spend. They can't even afford to bring back Jerks and Profar or Donovan Solano. Dylan Cease might get traded soon. Luis Arias, we talked to Ragazzo a couple weeks ago, and he said there's a chance, although he doesn't see it, that the Yankees could be a team trading for Arias. And you just don't know what's going on there with San Diego. And of course, you got Yu Darvish, who is a mentor to him, but Yu Darvish is close to 40, and who knows how many more effective years you've got. Now, a lot of fans were asking, when would that second meeting? Where's that second meeting? Where's that second meeting? And finally, we got it today. Ken Rosenthal and Fabian Ardaya reported that Roki Sasaki was meeting with the Los Angeles Dodgers for a second time, which is a huge deal, obviously, because the Padres and Blue Jays had meetings with him yesterday, and now the Dodgers are kind of the last one to get the meeting so they can sweeten the deal, one up everything else, and be the most fresh, top of mind. And when you get the reports that stars are going to be there, well, we can speculate who's going to be in attendance. You know, Shohei Ohtani will be there. Likely Yoshinobu Yamamoto will be there. I'm sure Mookie Betts will be there because he was there for the Yamamoto meeting. Will Smith, I'm sure, is in attendance since he's the catcher. And then you've got Freddie Freeman likely there as well. And then I don't know if Muncy or Teoscar would be there, but regardless, stacked house. And you got chumps like Manny Machado, who, what aura does Manny Machado even have? Like, does he win over ball players? I really don't think Manny Machado is a good leader.
Yeah, he hasn't been in his tenure. He's a really good player, and he kind of leads by example on the field. But in terms of galvanizing a locker room, he's not really that guy. And the Padres don't really have that kind of guy in that locker room. I mean, is Tatis the guy? Is Xander Bogaerts the guy? Is it Yu Darvish? Who in that locker room is galvanizing this team? I mean, when you look at the NL West, we talk about the rest of baseball kind of feeling like, oh, what are we supposed to do? The Dodgers are signing everybody and we can't compete. Imagine what these teams in the NL West must think. It's like, it's impossible. But at the very least, the Giants, D-backs, and Padres are trying here. They're making signings. They're trying to, I mean, the Giants are trying to hand out money to literally everyone. It's just that no one wants to go there. That's their problem. So I think that when you look at the landscape of Major League Baseball and fans getting upset at the Dodgers, they got to look at their own teams. Honestly, we've been saying this for a long time. Every team has an opportunity to either make trades or pay for players. They just choose not to, and that's a huge issue. And Major League Baseball has to figure out how to incentivize these teams to make these moves, to be competitive, to put fans in the stands. That's the big issue. Not so much that the Dodgers are just doing it better than everyone.
Totally. And one of the reasons I think this signing is going to happen sooner rather than later now is we've been getting word that a number of international prospects, especially ones based in the Dominican Republic, are losing out on previous offers and going elsewhere. The Dodgers had a few guys, can't tell you their names off the top of my head because I didn't write it down, but they've had at least 2 or 3 guys that were signed up to go to the Dodgers and then it fell through because the Dodgers are trying to keep as much international pool money as possible. They're at the very bottom of the totem pole. They've got $5.1 million, which is the near bottom of availability. One of the interesting tidbits I've been seeing out there is the Dodgers might be trying to trade guys in their farm system to clear up international pool space so they can sweeten the deal with Roki Sasaki's contract. And I've even seen people go as far as saying the Dodgers might be willing to trade Josue DePaula, which I'm not sure how legitimate that is, but if this is an accurate report, they could get $3 million in international money this year if they were to trade DePaula. And I guess then that would, put the Dodgers at the top and give Sasaki the best contract offer. But these are like super rumors out there.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Padres are at $6.2 million, and I think they've lost a couple guys as well. But that's where we stand in terms of the money aspect for Sasaki.
Yeah, if I were to take a guess, I would say that the Dodgers hold on to Josue DePaula just for now. I mean, he's a few years away from even joining the major league roster. I think they want to see what they have. I mean, he is a prized prospect right now, and the Dodgers have been accused of holding on to prospects for too long. We've accused them of that with the Michael Bushes and the Miguel Vargases of the world, and most recently Cartaya. Just not Gavin Lux, they hold on to these guys for far too long, and then their value just goes down to the point where they either DFA them or they get a weak return in a trade. But I think it's too early to get rid of Josue DePaula, especially when you look at just the stacked roster that the Dodgers have. I mean, even without signing Teoscar Hernandez and Roki Sasaki, I would give the Dodgers a major leg up in repeating as World Series champions. Now it's even greater than that. So the Dodgers don't need to panic and trade away young talent at the moment because their current roster is so good.
Absolutely. And appreciate everyone tuning in to the live stream right now. If you could do us a favor and hit that like button, that would go a long way. If you want to be a subscriber as well, much appreciated. Thank you guys. If you got questions for us, you can drop them below in the YouTube chat and we'll try to get to them. Now, today's been an interesting day because normally every now and then I get fed some interesting inside scoop about what's going on with the Dodgers. For example, when Tyler Glasnow was getting traded, someone tipped me off that this was happening, and I didn't have all the insight of who was getting dealt, but I found that interesting. Today, I've had like 4 or 5 people reach out to me, including someone that covers the New York Yankees. And all of them are saying the same thing, that there is extreme, strong confidence out there that the Los Angeles Dodgers and Roki Sasaki are at the finish line, and they're the front runners right now to get this deal done. Now, I am not going to go out there on record and say that I'm proclaiming this is a done deal. This is secondary stuff being fed to me from people that apparently have talked to people within the front office and even reporters that are very familiar names. But I'm keeping that all anonymous. And again, I am not going to stake my reputation on this, but I've had 4 or 5 people DM me today saying that Roki Sasaki and the Los Angeles Dodgers are imminent in terms of getting an agreement done. How does that make you feel, Jake?
I mean, it makes me feel great. I think that at this point, it's like, do we need Roki Sasaki to repeat as World Series champions? I don't believe so. I think the Dodgers couldn't do that without him. But I think where I stand on it is I'd rather us have him than the Padres, because what that means is that if the Padres get him, then we're going to have to face him for the rest of his career. And I don't want that. And I also don't want the Padres to have nice things. So for me, like I said, the only thing I cared about this offseason was Teoscar Hernandez, and the Dodgers did that, and everything else is just going to be gravy for me. So if we get Sasaki, I am very happy. Obviously, he is going to be value very much added to this team, but I'd rather the Dodgers steal him away from San Diego. That's my main thing.
Because pitching always remains a necessity for the Dodgers and not so much a luxury, especially how often we get snake bitten by injuries. A guy like Roki Sasaki coming to the Dodgers excites me 100 more times than the thought of when Juan Soto was a possibility of coming to the Dodgers. Because even though you just said we can win a World Series with or without Roki Sasaki, I feel like because of the strength he would add to the Dodgers rotation, shutting down the opposition is more prevalent to me right now than trying to score some more runs, because we know our offense is legit. But the one thing that the Dodgers can be inconsistent with, and we saw that with the postseason with a few blowups, can be the pitching. And if you add a guy like Sasaki to the starting rotation, you're looking at probably the best pitching rotation in the game. You've got Yamamoto, you got Ohtani coming back likely in May, not, let alone Tyler Glass now. Hopefully he's healthy. Blake Snell, a 2-time Cy Young Award winner, who's my most exciting signing. That was the top free agent I wanted the Dodgers to sign, and they added him. So I'm excited to see that lefty ace in their Dodgers rotation. Then you throw in Sasaki, and hopefully guys like Gonsolin. We'll see if Dustin May has a role. Maybe Bobby Miller bounces back. Clayton Kershaw could get some innings in there. They have a very deep list of who could be in this Dodgers starting rotation, and that includes losing Buehler and likely Flaherty. So they've done a really good job of strengthening already an area that was kind of strong for the Dodgers last season. So Roki Sasaki, and I'll talk about some of his projections in a second. To me, this is a huge deal if they can sign Roki Sasaki. And it's not just a short-term thing. This is a long-term, 6-7 years, and he could become a top 10 pitcher in baseball right away.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw what Yamamoto was able to do coming over from Japan. And he was hurt for a good chunk of the season and still showed up in the playoffs and cemented his legacy already as a Dodger. So I'm very excited for what Sasaki could bring to this team. And let me pose this question, Kevin. In all the years that you've been a Dodgers fan, have you ever been this like calm and comfortable with a roster before? I mean, minus last year. I mean, we're going to do a segment where we're going to talk about some of the worst Dodgers that ever wore the uniform. And I was going through year after year of these rosters, and some of these rosters were just horrific. Like, 2005 and 2011. I mean, just horrible rosters that we had to endure as Dodgers fans. And I don't remember an off season where I just felt as comfortable and, stress-free as this one.
No, it's 100% spot on. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is the golden era of Dodgers baseball. Like, in your lifetime, there probably will not be a better era to be a Dodgers fan. And the 100+ years of the franchise history, from a star perspective and now the success and output, this is the best time to be a Los Angeles Dodger fan. And that is exactly why we could be cool, calm, and collective. I feel like this whole close to a dynasty, whatever you want to call it, movement began when they acquired Mookie Betts. Well, I mean, it started with Friedman, but the first big move, the big domino, was when they traded for Mookie Betts. That was a move that you signed you traded and then signed for a Hall of Famer, a guy that will put this franchise on his back, and he's produced with 2 World Series championships now. Then last offseason, we talked about it before. It was the most important offseason in Dodgers franchise history because the superstar Shohei Ohtani was out there on the market. And whatever team was going to sign Shohei Ohtani likely positioned themselves to win at least 1 World Series, if not multiple. And we already got one in year 1 with Ohtani. And then we talked about how the trade deadline was probably one of the most important trade deadlines in Dodgers franchise history, and they needed an arm desperately, and they came through with Jack Flaherty, and then they got the NLCS MVP, and then they signed him to an extension, Tommy Edman, and you've got Michael Kopech coming back for 1 more year, who's a high leverage reliever. So this doesn't happen overnight. Andrew Friedman's been very tactical in the way he's assembled this team for the longevity, and I think that's why you're seeing more players flock to the Dodgers and want to be a part of this success because of the culture and winning sustainability. And it's for good reason why we can just be kind of chilling now. And everything is just sweetening the deal of what's already being the awesome feeling of being a Dodgers fan.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I think it was Fangraphs put some projections out there. I'm going to run you some quick numbers of what it would be like to add Roki Sasaki based off their projections. So they're projecting a 3.7 F4, a guy that could throw 148 innings, 319 ERA, 31% K rate, and a FIP of barely above 3, and decent command as well. And we know Sasaki, he has the stuff to throw 100 plus miles per hour. He has one of the most devastating splitters that can top out at 92 miles per hour. And he's really worked on, and he's throwing a very effective slider now that generates a lot of swings and misses. So if the Dodgers were to add Roki Sasaki, I know it's hard to make a judgment because he hasn't technically pitched in the majors. Where do you think he would slot in the Dodgers rotation?
I think certainly he would slot in. I would say number 3 at the moment, maybe behind Glasnow and Yamamoto, or maybe 4 actually behind Snell. I feel like you can't go wrong with any one of those guys on opening day, but I feel like they might give it to a veteran like a Glasnow or a Snell, and then have Yamamoto and Sasaki right behind him. But I mean, does it really matter? Who cares? Like it's going to be it's going to be the best rotation in baseball. The Dodgers have the best roster in baseball by a mile, up and down, bullpen, lineup, starting rotation. Even without Sasaki, it is the best roster in all of baseball. And I don't think that there's really one other roster that's particularly close at this point. So to me, I think Sasaki would slot in either 3 or 4 to start. What do you think?
I'm right there with you. Yamamoto, I think, is going to naturally establish himself as the Dodgers ace. And because Blake Snell is just happy to be a Los Angeles Dodger, he could end up being their number 1, but he'll most likely be at least top 2. So game 1 or game 2, that's Blake Snell for you. And then after that, it gets kind of interesting. If Ohtani is the Ohtani prior to the second elbow surgery, he is an ace on any team he's ever pitched for because he has a 3 ERA throughout his career. But I don't know how to forecast what Ohtani is going to look like right now. But if Ohtani looks like the Ohtani prior to this injury, he's easily their number 3. And then Roki Sasaki, I am very high on him. And I've been saying in the past that this is like acquiring the closest thing to Paul Skeens. But Paul Skeens is an all-star. He started the all-star game and is an ace on 2/3 of the league. But on the Dodgers, Paul Skeens would be the ace. But Roki Sasaki, he probably falls into the Dodgers number 4 spot, which is kind of funny that Tyler Glasnow all of a sudden takes a big step back and is probably the 5th best starter on the Dodgers. And then after that, sixth starter, don't care right now. It could be anybody. But yeah, that's the way I see it. Tyler Glasnow falls to number 5.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. But I also could see Dave Roberts giving a nod to a veteran to start opening day.
Yeah, so it's going to be Japan as we know. So Yamamoto for sure. It'll be interesting if they sign Sasaki. Do they just give it to Sasaki because they're pitching in Japan? Don't know, but I guess that's something we'll find out during spring training when we get more intel on that.
They may do a thing where it's like Yamamoto starts in Japan, but then Glasnow starts at Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. So the other thing I wanted to throw out there, there's this site out there on X called Vegas Gambling Steam, and they are very this is called reaching, but they said that Roki Sasaki is coming to the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I wouldn't just throw them out there for the hell of it. The reason I am saying this is because I did a little digging into them, and they've actually nailed some stuff in the past. They got 23,000 followers. It's not like they're chasing followers. They're heavily affiliated with Las Vegas, it looks like. In 2019, they were actually one of the first to break Bryce Harper to the Phillies. They were also one of the first to break Kawhi Leonard to the Clippers. And it looks like, based off the odds that have swung as well, Roki Sasaki, if you want to bet on this, is now, I think, a minus 200 to sign with the Dodgers, which indicates pretty heavy favorites. And this site just kind of hitting the nail on the head that there's strong optimism out there that Roki Sasaki and the Los Angeles Dodgers are going to get this thing done. And the number I've been throwing out there kind of consistently is I give it an 85 to 90% chance right now. Roki Sasaki signs with the Los Angeles Dodgers. The rest of it goes to the Padres. Blue Jays, no chance. I don't know why Toronto's even in it, to be honest. I mean, if I was a pitcher, I'd much rather go to New York. So it's kind of interesting that the Mets and Yankees were eliminated officially, but the Blue Jays still exist. Because I can't even think of one marquee Japanese pitcher that signed with the Blue Jays instantly coming out of Japan. I couldn't give you one.
Yeah, I can't think of one off the top of my head. It's very, it's tough because we can all laugh at the Blue Jays, right? For kind of always coming up short. The whole Ohtani, signing with the Blue Jays, the JP Hornstra, just the erroneous report that went out. And we can all laugh at them, but at least they're trying. Like, at least they're in the conversation. I mean, if you're a Blue Jays fan, you got to at least feel good that your front office is trying to get some big names to come to Toronto and build a winner there. They're trying to compete in a very difficult AL East right now. So I commend them for doing that. They may need to find other ways to get better through trading and, drafting and developing players versus free agents, because they can't get anybody to come over there.
So, question from Roy Estrada to wrap up the Sasaki talks. What came out of the meeting? Nothing's been reported yet, but if we get it during the show, we'll definitely discuss it. But I haven't heard anything yet, and I haven't seen any writers put anything out there. But I'm sure it'll come. I'm sure it'll come, whether it's tonight or tomorrow. This stuff always eventually comes out. So, got a good question coming from JCars22 over on X, and it was definitely a talking point I wanted to cover as well. So let's say Sasaki doesn't sign with the Dodgers. What's the pivot? What do the Dodgers do if Roki Sasaki goes elsewhere? I feel like they would have an opening still in the starting rotation, or maybe you feel they go elsewhere, bulk up the bullpen. So I want to hear your thoughts, and then I got some opinions as well.
Well, I mean, I'm always down to bolster the bullpen. I think that oftentimes bullpens get overlooked by fans, but bolstering the bullpen is something that I'm always open to. So, I mean, we've talked about Tanner Scott. You've got, Kirby Yates is out there. There are some other options there. I'm not sure off the top of my head, starting pitching wise, if there is another arm out there that would make sense. But I think that as it stands, they're going to want to add another starter because they want to be able to work in Shohei Ohtani. And what we learned from last year is that it looked like they had a surplus of starting pitching, and then that all went to shit because every pitcher got hurt. So for me, it's like, I think they got to bolster the bullpen and the starting rotation still, regardless if Sasaki signs or not.
Yeah, so I have a pretty strong
clarity. I knew I was missing someone.
That's exactly where I was going to go. My instinct is if Roki Sasaki is not with the Dodgers, then the natural move is to go with Jack Flaherty. It's been reported that I think by Ken Rosenthal, that Jack Flaherty is now more open to signing a shorter term, high AAV like contract, kind of like what we just saw with Blake Snell, where maybe you have to give him 2 or 3 years, but it would be an opt-out after year 1. And I could see the Dodgers maybe going back to Jack Flaherty, and they could just throw a 1 year plus a 1 option, 28 to 30 million if they really have to go that high. You know what you get with Jack Flaherty, which is a solid middle of the rotation arm. He's good to give you a 3 to 3.5 ERA in the regular season. The guy has nasty stuff where he can generate a lot of swings and misses. And he, unlike other Dodgers, can actually pitch in the postseason. I know he had a few bloopers and got pummeled, but he also threw a couple gems and set the tone in both the NLCS and the World Series. So if that's where the Dodgers have to pivot, obviously I'd be really disappointed because Roki Sasaki's not going to be on the Dodgers, but Jack Flaherty is a decent consolation prize, and he'd probably be a short-term thing. So you go back into the free agent market a year from now, and you look to sign someone else that's a big name out there, and you repeat the process. But I think Jack Flaherty makes the most sense. I think the other option for the Dodgers would be to pursue a trade. I'm still inclined to think that the Seattle Mariners would be open to trading either Luis Castillo or my guy Logan Gilbert, and I would trade a hell of a lot to get either of those guys because they're both front of the line, high caliber starters. Or you do something less sexy and you go after Sonny Gray from the St. Louis Cardinals, and hopefully the Cardinals would eat some of that salary to make it more appetizing.
What would you give up for a Luis Castillo or a Logan Gilbert?
So because the new rankings have put Zaire Hope as the Dodgers' top prospect, I feel like we get burned half the time. They don't end up panning out, but I feel like we have to respect their evaluation, and we can't trade Zaire Hope now. And you can't trade Dalton Rushing because he's probably going to debut at some point this season, and you can't trade Jackson Ferris. I don't want to trade DePaula either. I'm hesitant to do Alex.
They're going to want someone. They're going to want some top prospect.
I think we can get by with getting one of Joandre Vargas, Emil Morales, or even Kellen Lindsay, and then trading them some arms like Nick Frasso, Robleski if we have to, Maddox Bruns, those types of guys. Not the top prospects, but that second tier. I think we can get by with keeping Alex Freeland. I'd like to see what we get out of him. He could also debut for the Dodgers this season. But it is Luis Castillo. It could be Logan Gilbert. I'm more prone to give up a top guy if we really, really have to, but I'd like to see what the asking price is first. And then in terms of the bullpen, I feel like the market has just been on pause, and I don't know why. I feel like Tanner Scott should have signed by now. I'm kind of shocked. I'm kind of surprised that he's still out there. I know a few teams have been in on him, and the Dodgers have been reported to be one of the more aggressive favorites to sign him. But I still kind of in the mood of I'll believe it when I see it, because the Dodgers usually don't pay high leverage guys. And I've heard from an insider that the Dodgers plan B is Kenley Jansen, and I really do believe that is a plan B, that Kenley Jansen is someone they're looking at. And then from just a ball-knowing perspective, Kirby Yates is my other top target. Would love to sign him. But I do think at the end of the day, the Dodgers will get one of Scott, Yates, or Kenley Jansen.
I don't want Kenley. I'm sorry. I just don't. The way this Dodgers bullpen is built right now is not for Kenley Jansen. He's not a versatile high leverage reliever anymore. He was basically a dominant closer, which is great, but he's older now, and he's kind of a one-trick pony. And with the way that the Dodgers deployed this bullpen last year and specifically in the playoffs, I just don't know, are you comfortable bringing Kenley in the 7th or in the 8th with runners on base? I don't know. I just don't feel like he's in the same tier as a Tanner Scott or a Kirby Yates.
He's not, but he's the cheapest of the three. So if it comes down to money and value, you get Kenley.
Well, what do? You make him I know we're kind of jumping ahead here, but do we make him the closer? I mean, you kind of have
the Dodgers
to, right?
are so stacked in the regular season. It's not going to matter who's closing ball games. I think they're a lock to win 100 games if healthy. Things change with injuries, but this NL West does not scare me at all. The Arizona Diamondbacks probably took the biggest leap, but even their ceiling is probably like 92 to 94 wins. The Padres are due for regression. The Rockies are a joke, and the San Francisco Giants, their biggest free agent signing for the pitching is a 42-year-old Justin Verlander. So they do not scare me either.
What about Willy Adames? No, I hear you, but it just, I don't see the fit for him. Like I see, okay, fine, you want to try it, right? It's no skin off our back if he doesn't pan out or he doesn't have it anymore or whatever. You kind of go back to square one. But I just don't see the
We
fit.
won 111 games with Craig Kimbrell as our closer, so I'm not too worried. I think if you have your
Yeah, and then he wasn't on the
he was
postseason
not.
roster. And we gave up AJ Pollock
That
for
did
him.
happen. Well, the good news is these are free agents, so you wouldn't have to give up anybody. This is just a gut thing I'm going to say right now, but I know any day now the Dodgers are going to announce their spring training invite list with pitchers and catchers reporting on February 11th, and then the first practice begins February 15th. I'm following Brent Honeywell Jr. on Instagram, and he's been posting a lot of Dodgers stuff. I feel like Brent Honeywell is coming back on a minor league contract. I don't think he's going to get a major league deal anywhere, anyways. And so this is just my gut, throwing a prediction out there. Brent Honeywell Jr. will be with the Dodgers, probably starting in AAA in 2025.
He was like, I mean, I love Brent Honeywell. He was like, if you remember in 2002 when the Angels had the rally monkey, it was like a symbol. You know, he kind of was the Dodgers mascot in a way, and the way he ate innings for this team and kind of died out on the mound. You got to love it. I mean, you got to love it. You need those guys on a roster like this. You can stack it with as many stars as you want, but it's the Honeywells, it's the Tommy Edmonds, it's all those guys, that you need to win the title.
And then I'll give David Vassay his shout out, but he's been going out there on record, and I would agree with the sentiment that the Dodgers and Kiké Hernandez are going to get this deal worked out. It'll probably happen at the very start of spring training when the Dodgers can move guys to the 60-day IL, and then you bring back Kiké Hernandez, add him to that 26-man roster because you need that big clutch bat. And they traded Gavin Lux, for crying out loud, so we know the opening is there. So I fully expect Kiké Hernandez to be back with the Dodgers. It'll probably be money that we don't even look at because it'll be such good value. But Kiké is coming, guarantee it. We talked about it a year ago, how they need to bring him back. Saying again, they got to bring back Kiké Hernandez.
I 100% agree. I didn't agree when they let him go the first time, and I loved him when they traded for him again and then signed him in the offseason. Just do it again. Keep doing it. I don't care if he hits 150 in the regular season. You know what he can do in the playoffs. He became an everyday player for this team, and they won the World Series because of him.
Well,
not
kind of because of him.
Because
he hit that home run in Game 5 off Darvish, and was the only offense, I think, till the 7th inning when Teo hit the second home run. But the fact that Kiké, righty against a righty, no one else could touch Darvish, and in a Game 5, Kiké took him deep pretty early on to give Yamamoto a lead, and a one-run lead is a one-run lead. It's better than a tie.
Oh yeah, no, you got it. You got to bring him back. You just have to figure out a way to maybe get rid of Chris Taylor, because I want Kiké Hernandez.
Think Chris Taylor is on the chopping block. I don't know what the true outcome will be, but there's just no use for Chris Taylor anymore, especially with Kim being added to the Dodgers 40-man roster, and they want to make him as versatile as possible. Second base, shortstop, center field, corner outfielders. They're going to play him all around the diamond. And so I think Kim's going to be a better hitter than Chris Taylor in 2025.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, when we got Chris Taylor, did you think he was going to turn into what he turned into? I mean, no, nobody thought that. So the fact that we got what we got out of him is kind of amazing. And so I think we just got to be happy with what Chris Taylor did for this franchise. And he just can't do it anymore, unfortunately. And that's kind of what you kind of have to come to terms with.
Absolutely. And that's not to diminish Chris Taylor's accomplishments. Like you just said, great Dodger for quite some time. But at a certain point, they did it with Justin Turner. They did it with Cody Bellinger. Now they got to do it with Chris Taylor. It's just time to move on. So super chat coming from Timmy. Thank you so much, Timmy, for your super chat. Free Brent Honeywell. # free turtlenecks. Glad you mentioned the turtlenecks, because I love the signature look, the turtleneck by Honeywell. It just fits his character, fits his look. And I hope we get some turtlenecks back. for the Dodgers because he's the perfect mop-up guy, a guy that's willing to go out there, die for his team, and eat innings. And you need a guy that just knows his role and doesn't have an ego. And I think that's one of my favorite parts about Brent Honeywell Jr., where he knows he's kind of the scrub, but he can go out there and take one for the team. And all his teammates appreciate him for that. And not to forget, he helped Mookie Betts find his swing.
That's
all right,
true.
So I want to get into this stinky segment now. We're going to talk about the worst of the worst. So the theme here is the worst Dodgers over the last 25 years since the year 2000. Jake and I have assembled our lists of the worst Dodgers that we feel represent these guys of their positions. So I think the thought process here is we're gonna make a lineup, each of us, and we'll do one player per position and a couple pitchers, and we'll make some of them quick and maybe pause for a minute to reflect on some of these other guys that just sucked and we're total ass.
Yeah, there was so many honorable mentions that probably won't make the final list, that I just names you probably never thought about ever again after you saw them stink up the joint.
I'll go first with the catcher, and then let's see if you have the same guy. In the meantime, if you guys have questions for us or super chats, drop them below and we'll get to those at the very end of the show. Always love answering your guys' questions. So Jake, for me, the catching position, we got to go back to the year 2005, which is a whole segment in itself. But I went with Jason Phillips as the worst catcher. From what I remember of Jason Phillips, he couldn't throw anyone out. He could barely hit, and he was a disaster defensively. He had a negative 1.4 WAR, miraculously had a 650 OPS, but he only played 1 year with the Dodgers, and he stunk up the joint, and I feel like never was a great leader for his pitchers.
Yeah, and to me, I remember watching him and describing him running the bases as if he was carrying a piano on his back. I mean, he was so slow. Couldn't, like you said, couldn't throw anyone out. The worst pop time I think ever recorded, and I don't even have the stats, just based on the eye test. Jason Phillips was, there really is no one else that you really could compare him to, because even like, Rod Barajas hit like 13 home runs 1 year, and, Dioner Navarro had some moments, you know what I mean? Chad Kruger is another name that, you know what I mean? So, I mean, there are some other bad catchers out there for the Dodgers, but Jason Phillips by far the worst. I'm with you on that.
Super chat coming from Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Austin Barnes has got to be the worst Dodger of all time.
That is not correct.
Austin Barnes had a couple like terrible years where he was unplayable, but worst of all time when there's other guys out there like Tim Fedorovich and Phillips.
But also but if he was so bad, how did Yasmani Grandal lose his job to Austin Barnes?
He's also Kershaw's guy, so I don't know if I can go there. Austin Barnes was a solid backup catcher overall. Okay, you go with first base.
Yeah, I mean, for his hit. All right, first base, also on the 2005 team.
Really?
Hee-Seop Choi. Yes. He was expected to be better than he was, and he just wasn't. He had a couple highlights. He was in the home run derby, and he did hit 3 home runs in one game. But overall, I thought he was the most disappointing first baseman.
I hated Hee-Seop Choi, and I almost put him on my list. But I went with someone that had a much shorter stint. Well, not that much shorter, I guess, since Hee-Seop didn't last very long. But Tyler White from 2019. We acquired him out of nowhere from the Houston Astros, and he was affiliated with that 2017 team and the other teams that cheated. And we decided to.
What did he get? Like 2 at-bats?
He had 26 plate appearances, and he hit 0.45.
Oh my god!
He had 1.
Yeah, well, I guess you.
And he was terrible.
Yeah. I guess you could put Jim Tomei on that list too if
Tyler White was so bad. We had such a good thing going in 2019, and we chose to add that guy. He didn't play for another team since.
Yeah,
He
he was
went to
terrible.
Japan or something. All right, so I'll go with
Yeah.
second base now. This was a guy the Dodgers acquired mid-season, and I think at that point he was actually balling out for Tampa Bay Devil Rays at the time, and I thought he was going to be a good ad, and he actually wasn't. Julio Lugo, who I think who is now, he's passed
R.I.P.
away. When the Dodgers acquired him from Tampa Bay in 2006, he was hitting 308 with an 871 OPS, 12 home runs. The guy was actually all-star worthy. He comes to the Dodgers, has a -1 WAR, hits 219, 0 home runs, and a 545 OPS. He stunk up the joint so bad, and then he goes to the Red Sox the next year, and I think he helped them win a World Series. But Julio Lugo was god awful for the Dodgers.
He was bad. I remember him being horrendous. I was struggling to choose between these two, but I'm going to go with another midseason acquisition. This time in 2018, if you remember, Brian, he was awful. And it sucks too, because with Minnesota, he was an all-star. He finished, outside the top 10 a few times in MVP voting. He hit he hit 42 home runs in 2016. And then when we got him in 2018, he wasn't hitting that well, but when we got him, he ended up hitting 182 for us, 5 home runs and 20 RBIs. He was completely lost at the plate. Just a bad acquisition. And I thought he was going to be good. And he was terrible. The other honorable mention, that just didn't really do much, even though he had a couple of moments in the playoffs, was Logan Forsythe.
Oh, he was awful.
He was bad. Bad.
And they were traded for each other.
Yeah, he was very bad. Just did not hit 200 during the season.
I was at Brian Dozier's first Dodger game, and I think he went yard. That might have been his only hit as a Dodger.
Yeah.
All right, who you got at third base?
All right, third base. Let's see here. There's a couple options that I wanted to throw out there. Who am I going to go with? It's tough because some of these guys that you go with are were terrible for us, but then they traded them away and we got just exponentially better. Like Andy LaRoche, for example, was horrible for us, but we ended up getting Manny Ramirez. So how bad could it have been? And okay, but I'm gonna go with a guy that you probably most Dodgers fans have never heard of. In 2005, you've heard of him, Norihiro Nakamura. The reason why this hurt so much in 2005 was because this was the guy that immediately replaced Adrian Beltre. When Beltre left for the Mariners, they brought in Norihiro Nakamura. I think he started on opening day. I remember being there. But this guy only ended up mustering 39 at-bats. He hit 128. It was his only 39 at-bats in the major leagues. He was awful.
It's funny because I'm actually at the very same year as you, but I have a different third baseman. And
Jose Valentin?
Yes. So he actually was the Dodgers opening day third baseman.
Oh, he was. Okay. Maybe. I got that wrong.
And I remember him starting every day until he got hurt, I think in late May or early June. But to go from Adrian Beltre, who hit 48 home runs, to Jose Valentin, who hit 170 with 2 home runs and 14 RBIs. And thanks to Frank McCourt trusting Paul DiPodesto with his wannabe Moneyball spinoff nonsense, because he was Billy Bean's guy in Oakland, was the biggest slap in the face as a Dodger fan, because Jose Valentin was the definition of washed and was just terrible at the plate. That might have been the biggest drop off in Dodgers franchise history with regards to the third base position.
Well, yeah, I mean, they struggled to get a third baseman until basically Justin Turner. I mean, if not for Juan Uribe's final season, where he figured it out, his first couple seasons, Juan Uribe was terrible. They they went through so many third basemen until they got Justin Turner. I mean, Casey Blake was in there, so let's not forget. Casey Blake was good. But, I mean, to lose a franchise cornerstone like Adrian Beltre, there was a whole cast of characters that tried their hand out at third base that weren't good.
So I'll go with shortstop now. This one was actually tougher for me. I wanted to go with Jimmy Rollins, but I didn't end up going there. So he played one game at shortstop, but he overall played 14 games for the Dodgers, and he left such a mediocre impression in my mouth. I had to give him a shout out. Going to 2022, Eddie Alvarez is my pick.
Eddie Alvarez,
biggest scrubs. He hit 160 for the Dodgers in 27 plate appearances, had a negative WRC plus of like -12, 314 OPS. And I remember he lost us a game with his abysmal defense. I think he did something just big time blunder in right field, I want to say.
Yeah, I tried to go with players that you expected more from. So I actually went with Jimmy Rollins in 2015. He hit 224 for us, a 643 OPS, just did nothing. 13 home runs. But again, I mean, he was 36. So what did you really expect from him? But you kind of wanted a little bit better than that.
The only good thing about Jimmy Rollins was he was the stopgap for Corey Seager, who later took away the role from him. So that was the only highlight. But yeah, Jimmy Rollins obviously stunk, and you went from Hanley Ramirez to Jimmy Rollins. That was certainly a big drop-off in offensive production. So we're going to go to outfield now. I think it's your turn to go first, so you can pick an outfielder.
The worst outfielder of all time for the Dodgers. I'm just going to go right for it. Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones has gotten quite a lot of hate on this podcast because we've done a few segments where he's come up, but my goodness, his Dodgers tenure was just abysmal. Because they signed him to a pretty fat deal. And this was off him, coming from the Atlanta Braves. He hit 26 home runs and drove in 94 runs for the Braves in 2007. And a year prior to that, he hit 41 home runs. A year prior to that, hit 51 home runs. So you thought, okay, let's see what Andrew Jones can do. And then he shows up to spring training. He's very much overweight, and he ends up hitting 158 for us in how many games was it? 75 games. He hit 3 home runs and 14 RBIs. I think I remember calculating it at the time. I think he got him it came out to like $1 million per RBI. I think they paid him like $14 million that year. It was abysmal. And I think, honestly, Kevin, when we talk about the Hall of Fame, like this is what hurts Andrew Jones' candidacy to be a Hall of Famer, is that he just wasn't good for the long haul. He wasn't good outside of the Atlanta Braves. And to have that much of a drop off from 2007 to 2008 was abysmal.
And that's why I think I've said it consistently. He's the worst contract that Ned Colletti ever handed out. So he was my lock as well for center field. I mean, the fact that we were fooled into thinking this was a big signing in 2008, and he was literally unplayable, and they kicked him off the team a couple months in. He came in like 25 pounds overweight and out of shape and sucked. Andrew Jones is the stinkiest of maybe the entire list. He was probably the worst of all these guys I'm going to name.
He's probably the worst position player, I think.
Yeah. So I'm going with the corner outfielder now, and we're going back to 2005 yet again. This is my third guy.
Horrible.
This guy also on the 2005 team. I want to throw out Jason Grabowski.
Oh my God. Yes.
-2 WAR with this time with the Dodgers. Hit 196, had 11 home runs and a 607 OPS. But to keep it short and sweet, this guy played basically a full season's worth of a sample and stunk up the joint so bad. I mean, every single player on the Dodgers roster last season was better than Jason Grabowski, which I know is not saying a lot because they're good now, but this guy was god awful.
I remember because we already talked about Jason Phillips. I remember there were 3 scrub Jasons on that team. Can you name the third one? He was also an outfielder, and he was also bad.
I don't know.
You remember Jason Repko?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't think he was as bad, but he's definitely.
No, he wasn't as bad, but he wasn't good either. So
mid.
I'm actually going to go with Shane Victorino on the 2012 team. And here's the thing. Victorino wasn't as bad as Jason Grabowski, let's say, or Andrew Jones. But I think the fact that Shane Victorino tormented the Dodgers when he was on the Phillies and in 2008, 2009, I mean, just absolutely torched us. And then when we got him, I was actually excited because I was like,
same.
finally, we're getting Shane Victorino, and he hits 245. I mean, he was 667 OPS. He had 2 home runs and 15 RBIs. He was terrible. And very, very, very much upset with what happened, given the context.
And then he had a 6 WAR the next season. It shows for the Red Sox, who won the World Series.
He had a big home run for the Red Sox, I think, in the playoffs too, or the World Series. I can't remember.
All right, who's your last outfielder? And then I'll do mine, and then we'll get to some pitchers.
All right, let me take a look here. Oh yeah, Josh Reddick. I hate Josh Reddick so much. First of all, this was the year before he became a Houston Astro. We did get him along with Rich Hill, so that was good. But Josh Reddick was a terrible outfielder for the Dodgers. I think he started his career like 0 for 11 or something like that, and was just awful, just could not hit, and then became kind of an ass on the Astros after they cheated. And then, you know, he's just kind of a prick online. So I just couldn't stand Josh Reddick.
He crossed my mind, but he wasn't the worst of the worst. My other corner outfielder has to go to none other than someone I bashed on this show throughout the season. So shout out to 2021's own Luke the Puke Raley, who was basically Mike Trout in Oklahoma City for the Dodgers. But every time he came up and had an at-bat, and he was even on the wild card roster for some reason, I feel like he would just ground out to first base. He had no pop. He somehow hit 2 home runs, but overall hit 182 for the Dodgers, was an automatic out, and stunk up the joint, and then goes on to kind of have a solid career with 2 teams now. He had 22 home runs with Seattle, of all teams, last season. But when he was with the Dodgers, he stunk, showed low confidence, and definitely he probably was one of the reasons we lost out on the division in 2021, because it was a 1-game difference, and you got guys like Luke Raley batting in pivotal games.
I just want to give a couple more shout outs, just some names. We don't have to go into any details, but like 2004's Juan Encarnacion was bad. We had on that 21 team, Kevin, you could have gone with Billy McKinney or Steven Souza.
Sheldon Noisy is
another one that's terrible. 2022's Joey Gallo, terrible. You know, Miguel Vargas, if you want to count him as an outfielder. There are a lot of honorable mentions there.
All right, so there are a lot of bad starting pitchers that have pitched for the Dodgers over the years, but I'm going with a very recent name. So the year would be 2023. We signed him on a 1-year contract. Can you guess who it is?
1 year. Oh, 2023. Oh, was it Syndergaard?
Noah Syndergaard gets my nod. The guy talked up a big game, how he was going to regain his form, said everything the Dodgers touches turns to gold, said he was going to throw 100 miles per hour. I think he topped out at 92, only made 12 starts, had a 7.16 ERA, literally was getting shelled every time he went out there for the Dodgers. Couldn't get anyone out in terms of stolen bases. You allow a walk or a single, they're going to steal a base on you. He was just so slow to the plate, and it was a torture experience watching Noah Syndergaard pitch for the Dodgers.
I agree with you. I think Syndergaard was awful. He was on my list. But But I think in terms of expectations and dollars paid to this player, he is the worst starting pitcher in Dodgers history. That is none other than Jason Schmidt. This guy was signed to a fat deal it was Ned Colletti. After he dominated in San Francisco, coming off an all-star season where he went 11-9 and had a 3.59 ERA. He had a season, back-to-back seasons in 2003 where he won 17 games. In 2004, he won 18 games. This guy was a stud, an absolute stud. Then the Dodgers signed him to a 3-year deal. That was, I can't even remember the figures, but it doesn't matter because he only made 10 starts for the Dodgers. He was hurt the entire time. He was hurt for the entirety of 2008. And his ERA was, with the Dodgers, was 6.02. So Jason Schmidt, in terms of expectation, was just horrific.
Yeah, I mean, he's the other clear-cut favorite as well. Just was a disaster of a contract and a disaster of a pitcher. Were there any other starters you wanted to give a shout out to in terms of who sucked?
Yes, please. I love this. Let's see on my list here. Jeff Weaver, Edwin Jackson.
Jeff Weaver. Whoa.
Kazuhisa Ishii.
Oh,
He was
yeah.
terrible.
Edwin Jackson was my other.
Edwin Jackson you had. From the year 2000, Carlos Perez. Oof, he was terrible. Darren Dreifert, another guy that had a lot of hype about him. He was bad, even though he could actually swing the bat pretty well. Let's see. Who else do I have on here? I have a lot of relievers on here, but let's see if Matt Latos, terrible. 2015, Matt Latos, Brandon McCarthy, just awful. Scott Kazmir, one of your favorites, 2016. Let's see. Mitch White, another one of your favorites, 2020. He was kind of a starter and reliever. Michael Grove, just awful. He's a bad starter and a bad reliever. Also, no, he wasn't really a starter, but Andre Jackson, bad.
Oh, yeah. A lot of good names and a lot of names that I wish I could forget, but yeah. Edwin Jackson was the other one I just had to shout out. He was just terrible and he pitched for like 20 teams. And I'm glad you brought up Scott Kazmir because I forgot he was a Dodgers pitcher, but he was torture watching as well. Lance Lynn from Craig, he disappointed me. And Darren Dreifert, no doubt about it. What a disaster. So Daniel Berry, Sports Highlights with the Super Chat, throwing out Josh Fields. And Josh Fields sucked. Not only because we traded Yordan Alvarez for him, but you literally watched in the World Series. I think everyone saw his soul leave his body when he gave up back-to-back home runs in extra innings and helped us lose that game. But yeah, my pick, there are a lot that I despise, and I could go into a whole thing about it. Relievers. John Axford gets a shout out. He was trash. That 1 year, I don't remember his name. I got to look him up in a second. But my worst pick, the guy that I shat on a lot, Edwin Uceta. The guy was so bad for the Dodgers. And
I had him on my list.
They kept calling him up, and he kept getting pummeled. And it was like, what do they see in this guy? And now all of a sudden, Uceta is like a high leverage guy for the Tampa Bay Rays. They like fixed him out of nowhere. But when he was on the Dodgers, he was a disaster. Chris Perez was awful for the Dodgers when he was on the 2014 team. Pedro Baez wasn't terrible, but he frustrated me a lot of the times because he seemed to get pummeled in the big games. But yeah, I mean, those were some horrible, horrible relievers.
I had all those relievers on my list, but let me throw in a couple other names at you. And Yency Brazaban, he was bad. Ronald Belisario. Do you remember John Eli?
Oh, he was. The other guy that I blanked on, but I wanted to give him a shout out to was George Sherrill. Somehow in 2009, he had an 0.65 ERA, and then the next season had a near 7 ERA for the Dodgers.
Yeah, awful. John Eli, Brandon League. He was good initially, and then they signed him to a long-term contract to be the closer, and then he was bad. I had Chris Perez on there. Jim Johnson, he was bad.
Oh my God.
Jim Johnson was terrible. Chris Hatcher was bad. You know who was terrible in 2018 and just every year was, do you remember Brock Stewart? He was bad, very bad. Let's see who else. Mitch White, I mentioned. Mike, I can't believe you didn't talk about Michael Grove. You love him. And yeah, Andre Jackson, I talked about. And then the one guy, I mean, you said Pedro Baez, right? Because he frustrated. I had a hard time picking him because he was okay. He wasn't like one of the worst relievers. Another guy in this
category
that just crushed my soul was Jonathan Broxton, because Broxton was a great setup man when we had Takashi Saito, but then they made him the closer and he just imploded in the playoffs. I mean, the Matt Stairs home run, the Jimmy Rollins double, it was maddening for me. So I couldn't stand Broxton.
There's a lot of good names being thrown out there in the chat. Like DJ Peters was terrible. Brandon Lee getting a lot of buzz. Ted Lilly, Odalis Perez.
Ted Lilly actually wasn't that bad.
He wasn't the worst of the worst, but
yeah.
Zach Lee, that's a good one. But yeah, I didn't say Michael Grove just because, I mean,
why not?
I only wrote down a few names, to be honest. I didn't go too deep into it, but yeah, the worst of the worst, I gave it to Edwin Uceta. Timmy saying, why did no one mention Yohan Ramirez? Also a good one. Was terrible for the Dodgers this most recent season. Blohan's definitely in the top 10. One other name that I got to throw out there, Sergio Romo. He was god awful for the Dodgers.
God, I forgot about him. He was
on the 27.
He
was on the 2017 team, and because that team ended up making the World Series, you forget that Sergio Romo was on our team, but he had like a 6 or 7 ERA. He was a train wreck. I remember this one game the Dodgers had a pretty comfortable lead against the Arizona Diamondbacks, and he had a huge meltdown. I think him and Baez contributed to it, and that was one of the most frustrating losses at that time. Sheldon Noisy, we already mentioned. Just a lot of
Kimbrel. Yeah.
Hated Craig Kimbrel.
Brian Wilson is a good one.
Brian Wilson, I just didn't go there because he was electric in 2013.
He did. That's the thing. It's like there were some guys where I was like, well, he got a good first year with us, but after that was bad.
I know some people are mentioning Ryan Madsen, but I don't really fault Ryan Madsen. I think he got screwed over. Who was worse? Scott Alexander. That guy was trash.
I know. I thought about putting him in there. But in terms of the worst relievers ever, I couldn't say that.
Yeah. Wilmer Font is another one that I just scrolled upon. That guy was garbage for the Dodgers.
Another name that I thought about adding was Ramon Troncoso. He was pretty bad. Although he did have some good. He did have one good season, so
Wilmer Font had a 17 ERA in 2017 and a 11 ERA in 2018.
Brandon McCarthy, dude. Brandon McCarthy. We haven't spent a lot of time on him, but he was just awful. They signed him to be a starting pitcher, and he just couldn't do it.
He was underwhelming, but he wasn't the worst.
It's pretty bad.
Let's see. He had a 4.51 ERA. He was perfectly mid. Scott Kazmir was way worse, in my opinion.
Oh, a Jed Jerko signing. I see it. Okay, yeah. Carlos Frias is another one that I thought about.
Carlos Frias was the number one name I was going to initially say, and then I looked at his stats, and they weren't as bad as I remembered. So I gave him a pass. All right. So we're about an hour deep now. Jake, was there anything else you wanted to cover real quick? Anything else that is out there on your mind, baseball related, not baseball related? I don't know if there was any other good questions from the chat. I'm going to see if there's anything I can revisit real quick. I saw someone ask us about Tanner Scott, but we talked about Tanner Scott. Larry Bays. I'm still just waiting for him. Dodgers are certainly in that mix, but there are a number of suitors out there. But yeah, any other questions, make sure to hit that like button if you haven't yet. Just stalling here to see if anything comes through. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up the show. But yeah, Jake, I'm going to pass it over to you real quick.
Yeah, I don't really have much else. I mean, it's kind of a exciting and also strange time to be a Los Angeles sports fan. I mean, obviously the Dodgers won the World Series and the Rams are just are cooking right now, but the Lakers, I just don't know what's going on with them. It's a tough watch, and I kind of feel like I don't really want to tune back in until I feel like they really care. Like it just doesn't seem like the effort and the care is there, that they're losing to like teams like the Spurs and stuff like that. I don't understand what's going on. I understand the roster is not good. But to me, it's like, can we get some guys to give a shit a little bit, play with a little bit of effort? It's a tough watch. But the good news is that the Rams are moving on. They're going to play the Eagles. They're on the road. And I feel like the national media hasn't really come around to the Rams yet. I mean, I saw Colin Cowherd talking today about how it wasn't so much about Sam Darnold kind of seeing ghosts out there and the collapse of the Vikings. He was talking more about the success of the Rams. And I feel like more people have got to start talking about that, because what they're doing is kind of unheard of with some of the rosters and the draft picks that they've gotten. So I feel like the national media has got to get on the Rams right now.
So obvious that the Rams were going to pummel the Minnesota Vikings. I know Justin Yamas hit me up on Instagram. He wanted me to throw out one football take, so I'm going to do it. This is something that I don't know if I've ever said this on the show, but if you've talked Chargers with me, I was on the contrarian side with Emmanuel Acho, I guess, which isn't exactly great company. But I've been saying pretty much since his rookie year, Justin Herbert is the most overrated quarterback in the NFL. I'm not saying he sucks or he's bad, but the way that people talk up this guy, you would think he's in the company of Tom Brady, Steve Young, Peyton Manning,
or
Aaron
even
Rodgers.
even Joe Burrow, like they think.
Yeah, Joe Burrow, that's fine. Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff. Justin Herbert is none of those guys. He is the definition of a choker. He literally had a pretty great regular season, and then the minute the lights shine their brightest, this guy turns into a turtle and he collapses. He did it against I think they may have been Oakland at that time, but he did it against the Raiders in a decisive game for the division. He's disappeared then. He had like a 27-0 lead against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He blew it for his team then. And then most recently, a Texans team that didn't really have their shit together. He threw 4 interceptions and single-handedly lost his team the game. So this is 6 seasons now where Justin Herbert's yet to win a playoff game, and he has no MVPs under his belt. So he needs to prove it to me before we talk him up like he's some superstar. Overpaid, overrated. I don't get the hype.
Yeah. Chargers of the Clippers. That's my take.
All right. So I don't see any other questions for us. So I think we're going to close out the show here. My final thoughts aren't really final thoughts, but when we get the Roki Sasaki news, we'll try to go live as soon as possible. My guess and my expectations are we could get the news as soon as tonight on January 14th. But I'm feeling pretty good that we're going to get it within the next 24 hours. I feel like this is really, really at the finish line. And then something that I want to do on the show that I'm kind of teasing, and I haven't talked to it with Jake yet. I want to take the Dodgers position players and I want to rank them against the rest of Major League Baseball. So like, for example, Shohei Ohtani, probably a slam dunk to rank him as the number 1 DH. But Freddie Freeman, for example, where would we rank him as the first baseman right now in Major League Baseball? Max Muncy, third baseman, Teoscar, etc. So we'll try to work on that, get our rankings out there as the season gets closer, and more inclined stuff to come. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you're listening on the audio feed, hit that subscribe button, leave us a review. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and leave us a comment below. Drop some Roki Sasaki predictions. Thank you guys for all watching. We're going to close out the show now by peacing out. Go Dodgers. Have a great week, everyone.